So you'd think that North America, having literally hundreds of airports, finding ones that are actually quite good in MSFS should be quite easy, right? Yeah, no. Most of them are ancient conversions nobody's touched since release, or they're so expensive that you actually start questioning your life choices. But when I asked what you wanted after the Europe video, the poll results weren't even close. So I did what any rational person would do. I bought and tested what literally feels like every single Payware airport that you can think of between Alaska and Mexico. And yes, my bank statement now looks like I have a legitimate problem. But hey, at least you're benefiting from my complete lack of financial responsibility. I've narrowed it down to the top 10 North American airports actually worth buying. Let's do it. Starting us off, we have Flightbeam San Francisco. And if you know anything about MSFS airport developers, you'll know that Flightbeam is pretty much the gold standard everyone else gets compared to these days. The details are honestly incredible at this airport. You have hand-painted 4K textures with proper PBR work, custom jetways, VDGS systems at the gates, and Flightbeam did an actual on-site survey, so the accuracy is next to none. Terminal interiors are also solid too, with animated passengers and ambient sounds. Yes, they're not quite Pyreek's I can see literally a coffee cup kind of level, but honestly it's still pretty good. And in my opinion, Flightbeam has clearly prioritized balancing accuracy with performance instead. Which, speaking of performance, is another thing Flightbeam has absolutely nailed. It's under a gigabyte to download and runs perfectly fine on my 4070 Ti and Ryzen 7800X3D. The only real downside that I can see is that it is a little bit harsh on VRAM, so if you're under 16GB or less VRAM, you might max it out a little bit. Routes wise, San Francisco handles over 55 million passengers per year, with connections to 100 plus destinations worldwide. United dominate, but you've also got long hauls to Tokyo, Hong Kong, London, even Frankfurt, and that's just naming a few. It's a proper international gateway, so you'll get amazing value for money. This airport is exactly what happens when a top tier developer takes their time. Stunning visuals, excellent performance, and a price that won't make you feel robbed. Amazing airport, definitely a must buy. If you've ever wanted to fly the legendary Alaska Milk Run, this next airport is basically an essential. Seattle by MK Studios is where it all starts, and honestly MK has absolutely nailed it. The detail is genuinely amazing. Fully modeled terminal interiors, custom jetways, proper ground textures, and lighting that is honestly to die for. Routes as well are plenty. This is Alaska Airlines' main base of operation. You can fly the Milk Run, or if that's not something you want to do, you have flights all over the west coast, even down to Hawaii. Plus Delta has a decent hub there too, with connections all across the US and international routes to Asia if you fancy. The only real drawback that I have with this scenery is that it doesn't have an included GSX profile. And for a developer as big as MK, that's honestly a bit crap in my opinion. There is a community-made one on FlightSim.to, and I completely understand that this is an extra step, but honestly it takes like 5 minutes to do, and if you don't care about GSX, then, well, brilliant, you're sorted. SeaTac is another MK Studios banger. Great visuals, excellent performance, attention to detail, you name it, you have it. Just be sure to grab that GSX profile first before you need it. Next on our list is Toronto Pearson by FlyTampa. It is Canada's busiest airport and also one of the busiest in North America too. The ground textures are where FlyTampa has always been one of the best, and Toronto is no exception. Realistically dirty, proper weathering, markings that actually look faded rather than bright and cartoony. The PBR work here is amazing and everything just feels real to look at. And do not get me started on the night lighting. Those transparent windows that actually look terrible at night for most airports just look absolutely stunning here. You also have a ton of routes to fly. You've got Air Canada absolutely dominating with connections all over Canada, the US, Europe and Asia. Porter Airlines also run their turboprop operations here. WestJet have a solid presence, and you can fly cargo ops with the A300 if you want. And performance is where FlyTampa has pulled off honestly something that is a miracle in my eyes. This is a massive, highly detailed airport, and it honestly barely touches my FPS. We're talking maybe a 5 to 10 frame difference, which is mental considering the detail you get. As always, there is a drawback, and in my opinion, it just feels like this airport needs a little bit of an update for MSFS 24. Some of the buildings are a tad outdated in areas, and some jetways aren't quite right. but honestly that is me nitpicking and it's nothing that will ruin your experience. Toronto is still an absolute stunner though, a must buy, especially if you want to fly regularly in Canada. At number 4 we have the North American Innsbruck, and if you've ever flown into Innsbruck you know exactly what I mean. Stunning mountain approach, challenging in the wrong conditions, and it's an absolute visual treat. Jackson Hole sits right in Grand Teton National Park, and the approach is honestly one of the most genuinely beautiful in the United States. Proper backcountry vibes, mountains looming, and it's a playground in the ski season, which ultimately means that the ramp is absolutely packed with private jets. Dreamflight has included a fully modelled interior, which I think is to die for. It has this rustic mountain lodge feel that fits perfectly with the environment. You also have handcrafted PBR textures, realistic ground clutter, as well as snow removal equipment when weather permits. And the airport has the 2024 layout, so everything's current and accurate. There's even the new FBO construction in progress as it was in July 2024, with plans to update it once the real one is finished. Routes are largely GA and business jet operations. You do have the odd United, Delta and American connecting to Denver, Salt Lake City and Dallas, but this isn't a major hub like the others in this list. That's not why I've included this airport. It's because of the all-around flying experience and scenery around it. Gorgeous visuals, incredible performance, and it genuinely delivers the same vibe as Innsbruck. It's just the North American equivalent. Get it now and pop it in your community folder. It's as simple as that. 21 million passengers a year fly through Tampa, and every approach, to me at least, feels like you're arriving in some sort of paradise. Florida's palm trees lining up the runways and that coastline view on final approach, it is peak Florida vibes. And Verticalsim's nailed exactly what makes Tampa feel special. Animated fans, flags waving, ground vehicles everywhere. Tampa just has this buzz about it that most airports don't have. Ground detail is also solid, custom taxiways matching real life, proper wear on the runway with centerline lights and hold shorts, plus night lighting is just subtle and well balanced. Terminal interiors though are like half interiors, as I'd like to call it. They're functional but not spectacular. I personally love it, as I feel it's a deliberate move to keep the airport moving and alive over pretty but static interiors that most of us will look at once and then just forget about it. And this airport is a little bit clunky. It's heavy on GPUs and probably needs a little bit more optimization. It's not terrible by any means, but it's not outstanding compared to other developers like Flightbeam. That being said though, Tampa is a solid example of atmosphere and immersion over just raw visuals. And if you want an airport that feels alive and captures the Florida vibe, well, this one delivers. Next up is something a little bit different. Oaxaca is tiny. There's just over 1 million passengers a year, but solid Mexican airports are hard to come by in MSFS, and this one genuinely fills a gap. It comes with a fully modelled archaeological site that overlooks the airport. Night lighting works really well, and performance overall was solid. You also get hand-painted ground textures with PBR, a modelled interior, static GA aircraft scattered about, and all in all it just feels like a solid Mexican regional airport with attention to detail that's decent. And the approach is just something else. Being surrounded by those mountains, coming into a 2,450 meter runway in terrain that makes every arrival feel somewhat challenging, and the VOR DME approach from Cancun is wild, something you have to try. Of course, because it has a shorter runway, it means you're largely limited to narrow bodies, so you won't be able to send flights in a 777 to Europe from here. There are, however, plenty of domestic flights for the Phoenix A320, where you can fly to destinations such as Monterrey and even Los Angeles. So if you want to fly some Mexican routes and want something a little bit different, this one is genuinely worth considering. It's honestly beautiful, its approach is amazing, and the scenery itself is solid. Definitely this one is worth a look. The next airport on our list is arguably the most iconic and widely used airports in the world. Los Angeles International Airport. But before we get started, I do have to mention one thing. Performance-wise, it does come with the typical iniBuilds clunkiness. It is a little bit heavy on the GPU, so if you're not running decent enough hardware, or you're struggling a little bit with MSFS 24, you might notice the hit. It isn't terrible, don't get me wrong, but it is there. Routes from Los Angeles, you can fly American Airlines, Delta, United, Emirates, BA, plus loads more. You also have domestic flights all over the US, long hauls to Asia, Europe, and Australia. It is a proper international hub, and if you want to fly North American ops, you'll be here constantly. Modeling though is A star, especially for an airport as big as this. The Tom Bradley terminal is fully modeled, and you have airline-specific ground clutter, maintenance hangars, detailed aprons. It just all feels really alive. Plus, the night lighting is honestly one of the best that I've seen, if not the best. Just seeing that Californian coastline combined with the airport itself is just chef's kiss. There are some small tiny issues with the scenery, at least for me personally. There's poor LOD models that pop in and out, and there is a lack of interior modeling outside of the main Tom Bradley terminal. None of these are massive deal breakers for me on their own. Most aren't in your field of view as a pilot, but this wouldn't be a James Fuller video without some drawbacks. That said, this airport, in my opinion, is a clear step forward from anything default in the sim, or even freeware really. Not to mention you can't go wrong with either iniBuilds 2020 scenery or the enhanced 2024 version. The night lighting alone is worth it, especially if you want a main international hub, and if you could only afford one major international airport from this list, this has to be it. At number 8 we have another MK Studio scenery with LaGuardia Airport, and this is simply put their best work to date, full stop. Joe Biden once called flying into this airport as a third world experience, but then came the $4 billion rebuild, complete demolition, total transformation. And what MK Studios has done is capture that in the sim, taking what was once one of America's worst airports and recreating its stunning birth in MSFS. And you only have to walk through these terminals at night to fully understand what I mean. The see-through glass textures, the way the terminals light up the apron, the excellent PBR services create layered lighting effect that you don't see anywhere else. Most airports look flat and dull after dark, but LaGuardia kind of like transforms. You also get fully modelled interiors with passengers milling about, accurate signage, advertisements even for the reconstruction work. Jetways are individually numbered and designed for different terminals. Ground equipment is airline specific. Nothing seems copy and pasted. Even snowplows are here. And this brings me on to routes. They are slightly more limited due to the perimeter rule, meaning East Coast and Midwest destinations are your only real option. But its short runway means narrow bodies shuttling between Boston, DC and Atlanta. High frequency, short hops, massive traffic volume. That is what makes LaGuardia great. Just buy it, it's as simple as that. Next up is Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport by Flightbeam, the 18th busiest airport in America and Delta's upper Midwest hub. And simply put, this is Flightbeam doing what Flightbeam does. Performance is solid, it runs like an average size airport despite being absolutely massive, and I mean that. The installation size is just 1.23 gigabytes, 1.23. I have absolutely zero stutters with this airport. No sudden spikes when looking around, just consistent frames every single time. And this is the Minneapolis area, which usually goes full John Wick on my GPU. Somehow though, Flightbeam has just made it work anyway. I am a sucker for good ground textures, in case you couldn't tell. And yes, I get excited about tarmac. No, I don't get invited to any parties. Yes, the two kind of might be somewhat related. But anyway, this is where the scenery flexes hardest. Weathering everywhere. Dirt, oil, rubber around the stands, seemingly random wear patterns instead of repetitive textures. The jetways look abused from brutal winters, baggage carts with realistic advertisements, fire trucks, vans, pickup trucks. Absolutely nothing is default, and the whole place feels lived in. For a Delta hub, the route variety is great. Long hauls to Tokyo Haneda, Seoul, and even London Heathrow. Domestic connections all over the US. It is the upper Midwest gateway for a reason, handling 31 million passengers yearly, so you won't be getting bored anytime soon. Flightbeam's trademark quality, optimization that defies logic, and a major Delta hub for a pretty affordable price. What's not to love? And finally on our list we have Palm Springs International Airport by iniBuilds. This is the best airport out there and one of my absolute favorites to fly into. The desert California vibes are just nothing but amazing. Approaching through the mountain terrain with the wind farm visible, palm trees scattered about. It's just nice to fly into. And iniBuilds has done a great job of capturing all the little details. The Atlantic building has an actual pool out back with proper water effects. The Palm Springs Air Museum has military aircraft scattered about. F-16s, Tomcats, even Corsair. The tower looks solid. Night lighting is stunning, making the whole airport glow against the desert darkness. In the MSFS 24 version, you get enhanced LOD to keep everything crisp, and it's really well optimized, at least for me personally. For routes, major carriers serve Palm Springs with United, Alaska, Delta, Southwest, as well as WestJet and Air Canada internationally. It's a solid hub airport for West Coast flying, and you'll have plenty of variety to get real value for money. Honestly, there just isn't much to complain about when it comes to this airport. It just delivers. If you want a California desert vibe that really feels different, Palm Springs is an essential, one of the best out there. But if you're still stuck and you're still in the market for more Payware airports, I've got a whole video on the best European airports right here. I'll see you in the next one, and try not to crash.